So guys, we all have people in our life that we wouldn't be who we are without them. Could be family, friends, professional networks, whatever. And I'm just going to say that off the bat, that doesn't mean you owe them unwavering fealty. The good that they did for you doesn't make them beyond reproach, and if they're behaving terribly, they should be called out. In fact, that shows you're in their corner if anything. And sometimes you can hold two truths at once. You may feel that you owe your gratitude to said person, but that you need to walk away from them because they're being toxic, harmful, etc. But I do think that with those people, we do owe them some grace. And one case that's worth exploring is the cast of Harry Potter versus J.K. Rowling, as Rowling has always been an advocate for gay rights and for the most part an ally. As when Ireland became the first country to enshrine gay marriage into its constitution in 2015, she posted, "Watching the Irish make history, extraordinary and wonderful, and may the next generation never go through what some of my friends went through. A victory for love and human rights." And in the midst of the George Floyd situation, she posted, "The world has to change, power structures have to change, white people have to change, Black Lives Matter." So suffice it to say, quote-unquote progressive in many areas. But one area that she got a lot of backlash for is her stance on the trans community. Starting with 2018, when she liked to post on X saying, "Men in dresses get solidarity I never had." Or in 2019, she posted on X, "Dress however you like, call yourself whatever, live your life in peace, but force somebody out of their jobs for stating that sex is real, I stand with Maya." Referring to Maya Forstater, tax expert in England who got let go from her contract after saying people cannot change their biological sex. However, she ended up suing her employer, the Center for Global Development, claiming discrimination, and won after they ruled her views were protected. And then in 2020, when there was an article about creating a more equal world for people who menstruate, she said, "People who menstruate? I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wombin, wimpend, wombed." Also, she'd been posting about unisex bathrooms and how they compromise sex-based rights. Then she published a 3,600-word essay where she said things like, "I don't want to make women feel less safe because when you throw open the doors of bathrooms and changing rooms to any man who believes or feels he's a woman, then you open the door to any and all men who wish to come inside." She also stated that she was a domestic abuse and assault survivor and that she feels protective of her daughter, that she doesn't want her daughter to go through what she went through. And instead of being sympathetic, the woke mob attacked her.
So J.K. Rowling is what we would call a TERF. She is a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. Here's some of the things that she has said and done over the years. You can pause to read them all. Really, there's just no room in the LGBT or feminist movement for somebody who doesn't believe in intersectionality, because these things are nothing if we are not including people of all races, all identities, disabilities, any other minorities.
As J.K. Rowling continues to open her big ass mouth and say stupid the only ways that I've really been able to kind of reckon with this for myself, at least, have just been, one, making sure that I'm not actively providing her profit, as in, like, I'm not actively purchasing things that are going to be putting money directly into her pocket, and two, just trying to speak out about her and how terrible she is as often as possible. I don't know if anyone knows if that's ever going to be really enough, but it's the compromise that I think I've been able to kind of become comfortable with for myself, and in light of that, this is yet another reminder that J.K. Rowling is actively harming trans people, not only in the UK, but around the world, really. Her insistence on pushing transphobic, terrible rhetoric, coupled with her position as like a public figure in the United Kingdom, who people generally trust, is like actively contributing to the creation of laws that harm trans people in the United Kingdom. Because J.K. Rowling is a TERF, just objectively. And I think the only thing I can do is remind you all that J.K. Rowling is a TERF. She is a TERF. She is not a good person. If you follow or support J.K. Rowling really in any way, unfollow me, block me, or let me know and I'll unfollow and block you.
And clearly these guys did not read J.K. Rowling's essay, because she wrote, she believes the majority of trans-identified people not only pose zero threat to others, but are vulnerable and deserve protection. That she realizes they are likely to be killed by sexual partners, particularly trans women of color are at risk, and that like every other domestic abuse and sexual assault survivor she knows, she feels empathy and solidarity with trans women who've been abused by men. So contrary to what they're saying, J.K. Rowling wasn't even trying to harm them. She was just trying to make sure that accommodating trans people doesn't result in women's rights being stripped away. Clearly, some people have empathy only for themselves and those who unconditionally agree with their line of thinking. But because of the public outrage, some of the cast members of Harry Potter ended up commenting on the situation, like the actor of Hagrid saying he didn't find her comments offensive, or Jason Isaacs, Lucius Malfoy saying I wasn't jumping to stab her, and then Tom Felton, who played Draco Malfoy, showed gratitude for J.K. Rowling.
Does the sort of Twitterverse controversy around J.K. Rowling's views impact you at all, or impact your work on the world at all?
No, I can't say it does. The only thing I always remind myself is that I've been lucky enough to travel the world. Here I am in New York, and I have not seen anything bring the world together more than Potter. And she's responsible for that, so I'm incredibly grateful.
Which is ironic with Malfoy being the antagonist, because when it came to the main protagonist trio of the movie, you had Rupert Grint say that he firmly stands with the trans community and echoes the sentiments expressed by many of his peers. Trans women are women, trans men are men. But also that he likens JK to his auntie, doesn't agree with everything, but that she's still his auntie. But then Daniel Radcliffe said, transgender women are women. Any statement to the contrary erases the identity and dignity of transgender people and goes against all advice given by professional healthcare associations who have far more expertise in the subject matter than either Joe or I, referring to JK. And when asked why he felt the need to speak out, said, since finishing Potter, I've met so many queer and trans kids who had a huge amount of identification with Potter, and that seeing them so hurt wanted them to know that not everybody in the franchise felt that way, and that was really important. And Emma Watson was possibly the most vocal, saying, trans women are who they say they are and deserve to live their life without constantly being questioned or told they aren't, and that she wanted her trans followers to know that she and many others see, respect, and love them for who they are. Continuing to say she's donating to Mermaids and Mama Cash, which for those of you who don't know, Mermaids is a UK-based charity that supports trans and non-binary and gender-diverse children. And they were in a hole for a bunch of reasons, as one of their trustees, Jacob Breslow, had to quit because he attended a conference held by B4U Act, a non-profit. And their mission statement is to promote a science-informed understanding of people with attraction to children or adolescents and to support them living in truth and dignity. So basically wanting to normalize pedo behavior.
Why don't you have a seat right over there?
Also, Mermaids was under investigation when concerns were raised about providing chest binding services to kids under 18 and providing unbalanced, inaccurate info regarding the risks of puberty blockers. And as a result of investigations, there was in fact mismanagement, and they were also required to provide a more accurate picture regarding the risks of puberty blockers, and to be in compliance when it came to involving parents in the chest binding process. So basically, instead of helping trans people, Emma Watson was involved in an organization that actively hurt them. Talk about the irony.
Ironic.
Now, though Emma didn't directly mention J.K. Rowling at the time, it was pretty clear that her posts on X were about her because it all happened during summer 2020. And then people started to suspect that Emma was taking a dig at J.K. during her speech at the British Actors Film Awards.
I'm here for all of the witches.
Because some people thought that saying all witches was a dig at JK for not being inclusive enough to trans people. And that little whisper at the end was construed by some as her saying, bar one, referring to JK, of course. And when people posed the idea of a public apology from Emma and Daniel, JK said, celebs who cozied up to a movement intent on eroding women's hard-won rights and who use their platforms to cheer on the transitioning of minors can save their apologies for traumatized detransitioners and vulnerable women reliant on single-sex spaces. And On X quote tweeted, what actor/actress instantly ruins a film for you with 3 guesses. Sorry, that was irresistible. Again, seemingly referring to the Harry Potter protagonists. And to me, considering she's been open about the fact that she won't accept Emma and Daniel's apology, maybe she was bitter at Rupert Grint for not doing enough for her. I mean, I personally didn't feel like Rupert demonized her too much, but that's just me. And either way, Emma Watson was on Jay Shetty's podcast and seemed to want to extend an olive branch.
It's something I wanted to ask you about that's difficult and challenging because it's something you spoke about earlier as to being such a big part of your life, an important part of your life. Recently, there's been so many conversations and comments directly from J.K. Rowling, whether it's her saying she'd never forgive you for your views, or the fact that when she was asked what ruins the movies for her, she named yourself and some of your co-stars. And I imagine that's an extremely difficult thing when you've been a part of someone's world, when you've felt connected to their work, and then for it now to kind of be a full 180, and for someone to publicly say these things that can be quite extremely hurtful, actually. How do you think about that?
I really don't believe that by having had that experience and holding the love and support and views that I have, mean that I can't and don't treasure Joe and the person that I had personal experiences with. I will never believe that one negates the other. I just don't think these things are either or. I hope people who don't agree with my opinion will love me, and I hope I can keep loving people who I don't necessarily share the same opinion with. And I think that's a very, very important way for me that I need to be able to move through life. I just believe in having conversations, and I don't know, it's not so much what we say or what we believe, but very often how we say it. That's really important, and that's really frustrating and not what you want to hear when you're really angry and upset with someone. But I just see this world right now where we seem to be giving permission for this kind of like throwing out of people, or that people are disposable. And I will always think that's wrong. I just believe that no one's disposable.
Okay, first of all, she says no one is disposable, but yet when it was J.K. Rowling, someone that she knew, she felt it was more important to be an ally to the trans community than understanding where J.K. Rowling was coming from. Every trans person has a lived experience that none of us should dismiss, but so does J.K. Rowling. I think that as long as J.K. was never actively othering people, she deserved that dignity. Well, it looked like Emma Watson's words were not enough. Because when Sex Matters, an organization that's aimed at protecting human rights as it comes to your biological sex, posted a clip in response to Emma Watson's comments.
When you see the media starting to say trans women are men, then I think we really are winning. But Emma Watson was careful, wasn't she, not to go too far. I think what she's going to find now is you can't sit on the fence. She was a real cheerleader for Mermaids, the charity, and for transitioning children and for people knowing who they are.
There's also kind of there's that clip of her at the BAFTAs. There's that bit where she says, I'm here for all the witches, like, but one. Or what, yeah, it was just nasty.
Yeah.
Right when J.K. Rowling was getting a lot of rape threats, death threats.
So whether she is trying to row back from that full-hearted support for transitioning children, or whether she's just trying to get back in with J.K. Rowling in the hope of work, who knows?
J.K. Rowling quote-tweeted it and made a long-winded response, saying she's not owed eternal agreement from any actor who once played a character she created, that Emma Watson and her co-stars have every right to embrace gender identity ideology. It's legally protected, and she wouldn't want to see any of them threatened with loss of work, violence, death because of it. However, Emma and Dan in particular have made it very clear over the last few years that they think their formal association gives them a particular right or obligation to critique her views in public. That years after they finished acting in Potter, they continued to assume the role of de facto spokespeople for the world that she created. And when you've known people since they were 10 years old, it's hard to shake a certain protectiveness. Until quite recently, she hadn't managed to throw off the memory of children who needed to be gently coaxed through their dialogue in a big, scary film studio. That for the past few years, she's repeatedly declined invitations from journalists to comment on Emma specifically, most notably on the witch trials of J.K. Rowling. Ironically, she told the producers that she didn't want her to be hounded as a result of anything that J.K. said. That the television presenter in the attached clip highlights Emma's all witches speech, and in truth, that was a turning point for her. But it had a postscript that hurt far more than the speech itself. That Emma asked someone to pass on a handwritten note from her saying, "I'm so sorry for what you're going through." That this was back when the death, grape, and torture threats against her were at their peak, when her personal security measures had to be tightened considerably, and she was constantly worried for her family's safety. That Emma had just publicly poured more petrol on the flames, yet thought that a one-line expression of concern from her would reassure her fundamental sympathy and kindness. That like other people who have never experienced adult life uncushioned by wealth and fame, Emma has so little experience of real life she's ignorant of how ignorant she is. She'll never need a homeless shelter. She's never going to be placed on a mixed-sex public hospital ward. That her public bathroom is single occupancy and comes with a security man standing guard outside the door. Has she had to strip off in a newly mixed sex changing room at a council-run swimming pool? Is she ever likely to need a state-run grape crisis center that refuses to guarantee an all-female service? To find herself sharing a prison cell with a male rapist who's identified into the women's prison? That she wasn't a multimillionaire at 14. She lived in poverty while writing the book that made Emma famous. That she therefore understands from her own life experience what the trashing of women's rights in which Emma has so enthusiastically participated means to women and girls without her privileges. That the greatest irony here is that had Emma not decided in her most recent interview to declare that she loves and treasures JK, a change of tack JK suspects she adopted because full-throated condemnation of her is no longer as fashionable as it was, she might not have ever been this honest. And finally, that adults can't expect to cozy up to an activist movement that regularly calls for a friend's assassination, then assert their right to the former friend's love, as though the friend was in fact their mother. Emma is rightly free to disagree with her and indeed to discuss her feelings about her in public, but JK has that same right, and that she's finally decided to exercise it. And I think JK is spot on, because you can't just change your tune when it's no longer as fashionable to just let people get eaten alive by the woke mob. And you're allowed to throw people under the bus, that's your prerogative, but bottom line, don't expect that kumbaya later on. And JK Rowling sort of made that point when she said Emma was a multimillionaire from a very young age, because in addition to not having to struggle, Emma just doesn't seem to understand that even the kindest people have their limits. But guys, I want to thank you all for watching this video as always, and if you appreciated my commentary, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, hopefully I've earned your subscription. Here's some more videos for you to watch in the meantime. Until next time, peace out.